Thank you for joining Mission Mobility's short webinar, Missionpoint, the Intelligent Gateway, a Mobile IP Revolution. We'd like to stress that this presentation is a high-level overview of Missionpoint, not a technical brief. If you wish to learn more about Missionpoint after understanding the features and benefits from this presentation, please contact us to set up a meeting. For those of you calling in, you are on automatic mute. If you have questions, we ask that you submit them using the control panel on the right side of your screen. Today's speakers are Arnie Allen and Tom Morgan. After 12 years with Cisco, where he has held various roles, Arnie is now Manager of Systems Engineering for the Army Tactical and Special Operations Forces region. Arnie served 26 years in the U.S. Army, serving out his career in the U.S. Army Signal Corps and as an infantry officer. Arnie's military career has provided him with plenty of time as an end user at the tip of the spear, serving in airborne, ranger regiments, and SFG R&S teams before his retirement. Tom joined Mission Mobility's team with extensive experience in hardware, software, and networking protocol development. While he's adept technically, he is well known for working closely with customers to seek out novel solutions based on nuanced requirements. His reputation developed while holding key positions over the last 20 years within U.S. DoD projects, as well as in industry in support of the military and first responder communities. Tom can see solutions where most people don't yet see problems. Missionpoint is the fruit of that vision and skill. Arnie came from Cisco today to discuss how Missionpoint leverages mobile IP technology and to ask some hard questions about what the services Missionpoint provides mean for end users. For a deeper understanding of the technology, we can always set up in-person meetings to discuss Missionpoint. Without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Arnie and Tom.
Thanks, Ann. Hey, Tom. Again, thanks for having me over today. I do appreciate it. Just wanted to really sit down with you and get a better understanding about this revolution that you're doing with mobile IP within your Missionpoint solution. Can you elaborate a little bit more about what this revolution is going on here?
Absolutely. Just briefly, I want to thank you also for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us. Parts of this revolution, there are several facets that we've improved upon, and that's performance, flexibility, and security. So we'll be diving into those a little bit here over the next few slides.
Great, great. So the first improvement you mentioned here is performance. What exactly does Missionpoint do in order to provide performance enhancements out there?
Okay. The current legacy gateway structure that exists and is widely used and deployed, it has inherent weaknesses in performance, and this technology with mobile IP allows for tunnel establishment to occur with up to 500 times faster in certain cases than the traditional IPsec tunnels that are currently deployed. Also, within milliseconds, it's able to recognize a tunnel needs to be changed and reestablish over a new connection. And this is all automatically performed. Once the initial configuration is done for a mission, it allows for the people out there in the field, the actual guys that need to perform the mission, to focus on their mission instead of communications.
Excellent. So essentially what you're saying here is that the Missionpoint leverages the mobile IP technology to provide that speed and reliability. Well, what does it do for routing and efficiency?
Well, the gateways themselves, in a traditional sense, the legacy gateways currently deployed are islands to themselves. They don't have a lot of routing knowledge, so to speak. This protocol of mobile IP, as a mobile kit, registers with the gateway, it injects its routes, the subnets that it's specifically carrying on itself, into the routing table of that gateway. And in turn, that gateway quickly shares that with the other gateways and the rest of the network, so that when a kit switches from one gateway to another, there's less lost packets, if you will. The convergence is very quick as that topology changes.
Now, how is that different from a legacy gateway? So when I set up a VPN, don't I get a direct tunnel, or is that the problem?
Well, when you set up a traditional VPN, what happens is the IPsec technology does not inject routes into the routing table. You have to set up another tunnel through that and then run a routing protocol through that tunnel that tells the router that this subnet exists on the other side. So you have layers of overhead, layers of tunnel setup and tear down overhead, if you will, in time. And in order to converge those routes, or for routers to share knowledge of that movement, you have an excessive amount of time. So if you're in the middle of a voice over IP phone call, for example, in the field, then you will certainly see that lag time in traditional legacy technology.
Right. Definitely have seen that before with the VPN technology, and obviously, certainly come into this other issue that we're going to talk about here is the communications black hole, if you will. Generally happens when we have a point-to-point connection with VPN, trying to get to another gateway. Our loopback is there, but we don't see that we're losing any packets. But we're only unicasting, not multicast, not using multicast in this case here. So how is that different? How does mobile IP handle that?
So mobile IP actually will use packets within the tunnel itself to determine in both directions if the tunnel is valid. Now, a black hole situation exists where both endpoints, the gateway and the mobile node, believe that the tunnel is valid in both directions, when in reality, one direction could be down or misdirected or redirected. So that could be done because of equipment in the service provider network failing. It could be done by a hacker or what have you. So it's important to recognize, and anybody who hears this probably is nodding right now, and you were in the field at some, for a number of years where you've experienced lost traffic, but you couldn't really figure out what was going on from your viewpoint, right? So
spent a lot of time troubleshooting a phantom, if you will.
there you go.
So how is that handled with Missionpoint and using mobile IP? How do you stop that black hole traffic from happening?
As soon as the system recognizes that that's going on, which is typically within seconds, that is a configurable parameter, by the way, it will move over to a different WAN medium. So let's use the example of a hacker. Let's say a hacker has identified the tunnel and has redirected that traffic. As soon as we realize within seconds that this is no longer a valid two-way tunnel to our gateway, we simply tear that tunnel down and move over to another interface in a different part of the internet completely, so that hacker now has lost its source or its target, if you will.
And that's done autonomously, and that means I don't have to have my CISSP work on configuring that from a mobile IP, from a VPN perspective.
Absolutely. You do not have to manually go in and reconfigure like you do with legacy technologies.
Okay, great. So just for our listeners on the call, can you just kind of provide me a few highlights that on the performance perspective that mobile IP provides for your Missionpoint solution?
Absolutely. We've talked about a couple of them so far, up to 500 times faster in the tunnel establishment. We actually even optimize the IPsec tunnel establishment so that it can occur much faster than it can currently in the secure way be accomplished on the internet. We have an automatic tunnel reestablishment function in there. We have several WAN mediums that we're able to fail between. And as a result, it's typically within milliseconds, or if you're going over satellite, it could be a second or two, depending on your round-trip time. With the gateways themselves, they're much more intelligent. So they're not only aware of the nodes currently connected to them, but they're aware of each other. They share knowledge very quickly, very efficiently. And I think those are some of the ways that we do this. There are many more details, too numerous to discuss in this forum, but those are some of them.
Great. So now that we understand how really it performs, and you've highlighted several of those performance points, how does it react? How does it react? I mean, what are the benefits for me? I mean, when I'm out there in the field, I'm trying to plan for every contingency, and it takes me months to create contingency plans. I do TTPs. I'd put together PCIs, combat checks, and all those kind of things prior to go out and doing a mission, and that takes months to be able to do that. How is it that the Missionpoint solution? How is that going to help me from a flexibility perspective?
All right, if you if you think about the amount of time you actually put into planning for those contingencies, which are comms failures, right? Ways to work around the environment that you're in and where your comms would typically fail. We have built into this product line, this solution, the ability for it to recognize 90% of those situations and to overcome them automatically. Prior to the mission, an administrator would go in and set priorities on WAN links, for example, and priorities on gateways, so that when something goes down, whether it's in a service provider network or one of your own gateways that you highly depend on when you're in the field to deliver your services to you, takes a hit, it will move from one to the other. And you may or may not notice that. You would notice if you decrease the amount of bandwidth, but a lot of those contingencies are covered in the architecture itself because of the level of intelligence.
So that's great. I mean, Murphy's out there. He really hammers you hard, especially when you're in a tactical environment. So having that as a backup definitely is one contingency I would definitely need and definitely want on my side. That's for sure. Be getting that phone call at zero dark 30 in the morning saying my network's down. I need to connect somewhere else. It's going to take that manual process to get that going, and this obviously does that autonomously. That's great. It's good to know. So, you mentioned a couple of times about WAN medium. What exactly, number one, what exactly do you mean by that? And number two is how does that play into Missionpoint and mobile IP?
Okay. The WAN medium, there's different terms that different groups within DoD and first responder community use, and one of them is vectors. Another is WAN links or WAN medium. So what I'm referring to is a way for this mobile kit to find its way back to the gateway. And this kit can support numerous WAN mediums, and they're prioritized based on what's important for the mission and the users. So you could do it according to financial reasons, which ones cost the least I want to have as my higher priority links. Maybe it's bandwidth. I expect more bandwidth over these links. Maybe it's uptime. So you're going to be out in a flat desert, so SATCOM is always going to be there in most cases. So depending on how those priorities are set, we allow you to use those different WAN mediums the way they're pre-programmed.
And this is mission-based. It's dynamic. It's autonomous. That's a pretty powerful tool right there.
Right.
From my perspective.
And the contingency plans, when you're in the field, and I'm asking a personal question here, when you were out in the field and you had a loss of comms, what did that feel like to you?
Well, you feel like you got the weight of your shoulder, or weight of the world on your shoulders. I mean, there's lives at stake. Every second counts, and I've never been a doctor before, but I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so I guess one could say, you feel much like that. There's a lot of people relying on you to be able to make sure the comms get through.
So
the commanders
this type of solution, do you think this would have benefited you?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely would have. Okay. And as we talked about the medium, obviously you've also mentioned the gateways. So the gateways obviously fall under the same purview as being autonomous, as being dynamic, and can be pre-configured prior to for mission-specific connectivity, right? Is that the case?
Absolutely. You can prioritize the gateways. You can have up to 16 simultaneous gateways configured into each kit. And depending on your theater of operations or disaster zone, if you will, if you're a first responder, you would have your priorities a little bit different. You'd want the closest gateway with the least round-trip delay, latency possible as you establish your tunnels. And that way, within potentially milliseconds, your tunnels are transferring from one WAN medium to another versus having to go halfway around the globe to another gateway just because it was pre-programmed that way. The standard gateways out there, the legacy, if you will, it's a manual process because they're currently configured for a single gateway. So you have to go into the kit if a gateway goes down, or if your WAN medium can't reach your gateway, you go into the kit and you have to point it to the COOP site or your secondary site or your tertiary site.
Right.
So there's a lot of manual work that is involved there. So you have warfighters that have to be almost experts in communications to be able to accomplish their mission instead of focusing on their own lives and accomplishing that mission.
So with the legacy systems, what you're saying is I'm pretty much going to have the Pocket CISSP or CCIE with me in order to be able to really maintain my VPN connectivity.
Oh, that would certainly help.
That would definitely help. So thanks for explaining that a little better for me. So can you just cover for me real quickly again some of those highlights again? I'm talking about our WAN gateway and how flexible these things are from a Missionpoint perspective.
Absolutely. Several WAN links or WAN mediums on each mobile kit. Each mobile kit's also able to connect to up to 16 gateways, as they fail, as they're unreachable, if you will. And then moving seamlessly, being able to keep your voice over IP call or your VTC up and running while it's moving from one to the other is that seamless communications. And the only difference, really, you're able to have the same experience you would have sitting at your desk in your office with the exception of bandwidth. So if you have a fat satellite pipe, so to speak, out there, you would have a pretty close experience except for round trip time. But your bandwidth is going to change. It's dynamic. It's in an RF environment out there. And this adapts proactively for you in the environment.
And again, that's the delta really between the legacy system and what Missionpoint and mobile IP is providing is the fact that it is autonomous and it does dynamically make those priority changes based on how your mission capabilities.
Absolutely. All the points we're making today in this webinar are deltas. There are many, many more, but they are all deltas between legacy and this technology.
Well, everything we've talked about up to this point has been some great improvements, I think, in this space, especially how we communicate in the field with the use of VPNs from a legacy perspective. I get these questions all the time. I'm sure you get the questions as well. What about security? How do I secure this? What's going to, information assurance is a big issue these days. How do we handle that?
Absolutely. That's a great question and very important because the mission data is not only critical to accomplishing the mission, but we want to keep that private. We have to protect that data so that the troops are protected as well. And in doing that, what we're doing on the mobile IP side, we are covering, of the three parts of a secure tunnel, you have authentication, integrity, and privacy. And the mobile IP tunnel has several security mechanisms in place. It authenticates, so the gateway knows that the mobile kit belongs. It knows who it is, right? And vice versa. The mobile kit needs to know that it's not redirected to somebody else. It's really talking to its gateway. So it's authenticated. It needs to know that integrity is in place, that when the gateway sends the packet, the mobile kit is absolutely sure that the packet has not been modified or tampered with, and vice versa. And once that tunnel is stood up, within that tunnel, we have an IPsec tunnel that covers, it does all three phases, except we can now streamline it. Since we're already authenticated and integrity is proven, we can do aggressive mode instead of main mode and be confident that it's secure. And we also have the encryption built in there. And on the base station or the gateway side, the Missionpoint has two zones, two security zones. It has the public and the private. And the home agent router, which exists on the public side, only has knowledge of the public realm and the routes to and from it. The internal router has knowledge of only the private side, and it has to hand off to somebody else inside the network, whether it's a firewall or something else, to deliver to the public realm. So that's another barrier that hackers would have to break through, if you will, to break into the system. So we're trying to cover all the bases, and we found that IA personnel are extremely happy once they understand how this works.
Right. So I find it interesting that you've gone down to basically a single port. Definitely makes it a non-friendly environment for hackers. I mean, if you have just one entry point, one exit, one ingress, one egress, you can definitely put guards at the gate, if you will. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that and how that has a play in all the security?
Absolutely. There are several layers of this, layers of the customer's infrastructure that are affected here. We're not only affecting the security of the device, but we're affecting the performance of their security equipment, their firewalls, IPSs, IDSs. The home agent, for example, runs on UDP 434. And because of that, there's a single port, single protocol, a single firewall rule. Now imagine that. Current infrastructures, the legacy gateway and kit technology requires 6 to 7 rules to allow this to occur, where now we are down to one pinhole, one rule in the firewall. So your firewalls, IPSs, IDSs improve in their performance, and the gateway itself will drop any packet that is not a mobile IP packet and does not match the appropriate authentication mechanisms that we have in place. And there are replay attacks that we plan for, and man in the middle, and all sorts of reconnaissance attacks that we are mitigating in this technology.
Well, that's great. Essentially, what you're really telling me here is that boils down for me is I don't have that requirement of really putting a CISSP out there to put multiple policies out on a firewall. So that reduces that overhead automatically. Less human error in that regard as well, right?
Absolutely.
So what kind of highlights do you want to talk about here as it pertains to security?
We just talked about the single port and protocol, which is really important. Sure. But we've also overcome weaknesses in IPsec. Right? In order to establish a tunnel in IPsec, that can take many seconds to accomplish, even over a minute in certain circumstances. And the weaknesses of IPsec are the endpoints. If your IP changes, if your interfaces change, it takes manual intervention to reach in and reconfigure those to a new gateway, to anchor it to a new IP address or a new interface and so forth. So we've done that to virtual interfaces in the routers at each end. They're permanently addressed, and those do not change. We've also disabled split tunneling, which is something you're probably extremely familiar with in the security realm.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you're able to leverage your IA architecture at your home base or wherever you put the gateways instead of carrying that capability into the field and either enabling it on the routers, bogging them down, or bringing physical gear into the field to protect you.
Well, it really sounds like you put together a great solution here with Missionpoint. The revolutionary idea of leveraging mobile IP for this particular solution is just phenomenal. But there's other things that are out there that customers also ask me a lot of times, and even as an end user, I would generally ask others is, what kind of support do I get? If I'm in the middle of Indian country, how do I get that phone call back, and who do I talk to? Am I going to get, I'm halfway around the world, I'm several time zones away. Am I going to get an answering machine at Mission Mobility?
You actually get connected to a real person.
Great.
Every time you call in. So we take support very seriously. We understand that any time that phone rings, a life or lives could be at stake, and that means something to us. We feel like we're partners. We're with you in the field, so to speak. So we take that very seriously. And the ability to answer the questions, to fix the problems if they exist within the first call. The percentage is very high. Software updates, configuration changes and so forth, all of these things we can assist with depending on your maintenance level, contract, and so forth.
Excellent. I also get this one question a lot as well, and that is this slideware? Is there some man behind the curtain? Is it magic? Have my hands left my wrist? Has this really been deployed? I mean, are people really using Missionpoint?
Yes, they are, and they're very happy with it. In fact, once it's deployed, they often, not only did they not realize that these problems could be overcome, but they couldn't realize how they lived without it. Now, I'm not at liberty to list all the customers currently using it, but they exist in DoD, special ops of, certainly our country and some of our friendly nations. And one of the quotes that we received from one of those individuals, they were really under a time crunch in a project, and they brought us in and said the innovative solution was used as a backbone of the second phase of a new project. Again, the first phase had failed. They tried to do it in a legacy manner, and it failed. And the deployable solution provided by his company was just superior to other solutions and visibly cut project's time frame with accountable public savings. Imagine that, just that one statement. You're saving money, you're saving time, and it accomplishes the mission and lightens the load on those who have to perform the mission. And what a statement.
Absolutely. And, to be honest with you, that kind of really segues into my next question is, what about the return on investment? We can talk about the life cycle capabilities here, Moore's Law. I mean, that's a big thing for Cisco. As we start working with more and more integrators like your company and putting in off-the-shelf solutions into your integrated offerings, the fact that programs of record, it takes technical insertions of 3 to 5 years or even beyond that, and could take up to 20 years to actually run the cycle of a program where you're leveraging off-the-shelf technology. It's new, it's fresh, it's changing every 3 to 5 years. So it's really in line with that whole Moore's Law theory. What other kind of things that you see from ROI management? I know that we talked about the fact that the reduction of having to put a person out there to nug out 18 different policies on a firewall is one of them. But what are some other things that could give you ROI management perspective?
Well, some of those things are the human factor, where people currently are getting trained up on, Cisco gear. So we have Cisco iOS in here. They're familiar with it. They are able to cut down on their contingency plans. They're able to focus on the mission, so they're saving their lives and the lives of those who they're out there on their mission to save. And it's modular. When 5G comes out, a module can be swapped out. It's not a forklift upgrade. There are several things that we could talk about right now. I know that we're getting close on time here, but a lot of interesting facets of this.
One of those things, too, you probably wanted to also mention, but it is backward compatible, so
it
does work well with the legacy systems out there. Speaking of the legacy systems, what are some of those enablers that of the systems that you are working with currently today that Mission Mobility provides?
Well, we provide all types of kits. Right? Over the years, they've been Cisco-based and currently are, and so people are familiar with those. They can tie into legacy gateways, and as customers upgrade to the new Missionpoint suite of or architecture, we're able to convert those over. So it's not literally a forklift upgrade. You don't flip the switch one day and now your old kits don't work, your new ones do. These will talk to either or. And so we've tried to provide a number of products that are cradle to grave here. One-stop shop for mobile optimized communications.
The bottom line, if you want to really take advantage of the revolution, to get that performance, security, and flexibility, you want to take advantage of Missionpoint. Is that
Absolutely. To fully realize all of the benefits, you want to have your kits and your gateways.
And if you maybe want to just highlight a couple of those out of each one of these areas for us, so that we can. What are some of the takeaways, maybe?
So I would want everybody to remember that you can have, this will automatically manage your WAN connectivity. It's able to move from one gateway to another, which gives you a lot of flexibility in the field. There's less of a requirement for human interaction. We've minimized packet loss. We've streamlined the traffic in the shaping process and optimizing to go through these tunnels. We've increased the speed. So performance, flexibility, and security, we want that to be remembered by everybody after this.
Okay, excellent. And one last question I have here is regarding your tiered gateway structure that you have. I noticed that they all leverage the Cisco technology, whether they're ISRs all the way up to the 7600s. Can you talk a little bit about the tiers?
Absolutely. Depending on your needs as a customer, Tier 1, if you're never going to go beyond 25 kits and 500 users, Tier 1 is more than sufficient. You can have that at multiple locations. All of these have the same capability to participate in this intelligent architecture. As your capacity increases, if it looks like you're going to exceed 25 and not exceed 150, you want to go with the Tier 2, and then the big powerhouse at Tier 3, hundreds of kits and thousands of users and so forth.
It's definitely the workhorse, right?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, great. So if I'm a call-in user, if I'm just someone that's listening to this webinar, how can I get more information really about Missionpoint and mobile IP revolution?
We would love to talk to you more about this. There are hundreds of other points that we could discuss, and we have a toll-free number and an email, info@missionmobility.com. It's very simple to get in touch with us. We will welcome the opportunity to help others with their missions here.
Excellent. Alan, thanks again, Tom, for having me stop by, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about Missionpoint and the mobile IP revolution.
Thank you for your time. I know you're really busy, Arnie.
At this time, we'd like to take a few questions from our audience. We have one here. They ask, you said it can seamlessly shift between WANs, but how many different WAN connections can it support?
Well, that depends on how many interfaces are in the mobile kit. I mean, literally, the software has no limit, but the practical limit is going to be the number of VLAN interfaces or routed interfaces that you have, or wireless, built-in radios, because several of the interfaces you don't see, you just see the antennas in some of these solutions. So, I mean, you could get up to 128 WAN interfaces, but that would be quite a sizable mobile kit. So more practically, we see between 5 and 9. That's more likely to be used.
Another question is, does your Missionpoint allow central management of all the mobile kits?
It absolutely does. As long as the kits have at least one tunnel up and operational to a gateway, they can be centrally managed, reconfigured, repurposed, if you will, for different missions, prior to the guys taking them out there on a new mission. Absolutely.
Maybe, Arnie, you might be able to answer this one for us. Is this product covered under the Army ESA?
Yeah, the embedded products that you're currently using out there are certainly going to be covered under the Army Enterprise Service Agreement. That is where the Army has purchased a service, SmartNet, if you will, for all of the products that they currently own and then they would buy in the future. So that would be something that's certainly covered. Mission Mobility would handle that part of it, but it would actually be coming back in through our TAC. So we would be doing the level 1 support on that from that aspect, absolutely.
Okay. This person asks, I have 1,000 users and about 20 kits deployed at any given time. What tier would you recommend?
Okay, so the tiers are really based on 2 factors. One is the overhead to the gateway on a per mobile kit basis, and that's generally fairly low. But the packets per second are going to be critical here. So if it's 1,000 users on 20 kits, it sounds like that's going to be some medium-sized groups out there. So I'd recommend a tier 2 level gateway for that, for the packets per second. Now the actual limit is going to be the current WAN bandwidth that you have. If you're using 4G, you can get a lot of bandwidth per kit. And if you're using just a small satellite shot, it's not much bandwidth. But I would certainly recommend, because of the flexibility of the kits, to go with the tier 2 gateway.
Okay, I have a related question here. What's the downside to breaching the recommended tier maximums, and how easy is it to make that upgrade to the next tier?
Okay, well, if you, for example, if you get a tier 1, and which is has a limit of around 25 kits and about 500 users. If you put 30 kits and about 700 users on there, and you don't change your gateways, then what will happen is those gateways will decrease in performance on a per kit basis. So all the kits would then decrease in performance. It's spread across the entire connected base, if you will. So it's important that we scope this to scale to what a customer is looking for as far as their permanent plans in the future. Otherwise, it will, to move from a tier 1 to a tier 2, you actually do have to change routers in there in order to get the processing power.
So it looks like we have a tough question here. This product sounds great, but if you had to admit to one weakness, what would that be?
Well, that's a good question, and this depends on whose perspective you're looking at this from, right? From our perspective, a weakness may be the perception that some people could feel like they're being displaced by technology, right? When it's not necessarily the case. What this allows somebody to do, instead of spending 60% of their time paying attention to communications, that same body will still exist, but now it's only 10% or 15% of their time. So it's not really displacing people. It's actually allowing them to be repurposed and refocused on the mission of saving lives. So if there's one perceived weakness, I guess that could be perceived that way by some, but when they really look at it, it's over the TCO and the amount of pressure that's put on the individual for comms. I think they quickly agree that it's not a weakness at all, it's a strength.
Oh, you mentioned TCO. I have another question relating to that. Given sequestration, that word had to come up today, definitely. Given sequestration, how do you expect people to make the switch to more expensive equipment, even if the TCO is better? Are there payment plans available?
Yes, through our reseller channel, there are ways to make payments, whether it's leasing or renting to own or what have you. I'm not an expert in that. I'm a guy who designs equipment and makes it work, but through our reseller channel, there are very flexible financing avenues that can be taken.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. There will be a recorded version of this webinar available in a few days via YouTube and on our website. Thank you very much, and feel free to give us a call or give us an email.